Right, is the state prepared to call its next witness?
Yes, Judge. The state calls Jeff Gudenkauf.
Good afternoon, sir. Just come on up here. There's a seat to my far left. If you'd go ahead and grab a seat. And you can adjust that microphone. Yep. So first thing I'm going to do, sir, is swear you in. If you please raise your right hand. Sir, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving today will be the truth?
I do.
Okay. And then for the record, can you please give us your first name and last name and spell them for us?
Jeff Gudenkauf, Jeff Gudenkauf.
All right, Mr. Ringle.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Gudenkauf, how are you employed?
Good.
How are you employed, sir?
I'm sorry?
How are you employed?
I work for Shelter Insurance.
What do you do for shelter insurance?
I'm an agent.
What are your general duties as an insurance agent?
To sell and service policies, property casualty and life insurance.
You mentioned life insurance. Could you just briefly break down how life insurance policies work?
Sure. So the owner of a life insurance policy pays premiums into the company with the expectation that upon the death of the insured, proceeds are paid out to the beneficiary listed on the policy.
So how is a life insurance policy obtained?
The owner of a policy completes an application for an insured. There are medical tests that can be completed if that is a requirement of the policy. That goes through an underwriting process, and then a policy is either issued or the application is declined.
And how are the beneficiaries determined?
That is determined at the time of application based on the owner. It's generally some sort of a family member, but not in all cases.
So if someone's interested in obtaining a life insurance policy and they're doing that through you with Shelter Insurance, what does that process look like?
Generally, they will reach out and a number of conversations can take place determining the amount of life insurance. The application process is generally about 4 to 5 pages. A lot of medical history questions. Signatures are obtained, and that policy application is submitted to the company for underwriting.
May be obvious, but what's the purpose of the medical information that you obtain?
As with anything with insurance, you're essentially insuring a risk, so you're trying to determine the likelihood of that policy paying out. So obviously the health history of an individual bears a pretty significant impact on that.
So if there's only a single beneficiary that's listed, is that the individual who then receives the sum of money or the amount the insurance policy was for upon the death of the insured?
Can you say that again?
Yes, if there's only a single beneficiary, is that the only individual then who's paid out upon the death of the insured?
Yes, generally.
Can you explain the process or what occurs upon the death of an insured?
Following death, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So generally the beneficiary will contact the company to let us know of the death of the insured. If I'm the point of contact on that, I relay that information to the company directly, and then they obtain the needed information from the beneficiary in order to process that payment.
Do you yourself reach out to beneficiaries and indicate that there's a life insurance policy that exists and a potential payout?
It's not my practice to do so, no.
Presumably, if someone obtains a life insurance policy, that's documented, correct?
Yes.
Now, I know that things may have changed. A lot of things are done electronically now, but if someone was obtaining a life insurance policy in the past, say 2021 or before, is that something you would do in person?
Yes.
Okay. And they would come into your office and sit down and sign documents, is that correct?
Generally in the office. I've done it in people's homes as well.
Did you know Ryan Cooper?
Yes.
How did you know him?
He was a client of my agency when I began back in 2006.
Did he have any life insurance policies through Shelter Insurance?
He did.
Do you recall how many life insurance policies he had?
On himself or as the owner?
Yeah, just on himself, he being the insured.
I believe 2.
Judge, may I approach?
You may.
Going to be showing you what's been marked as States Exhibits 207 and 208. Do you recognize those documents?
I do.
What is States Exhibit 207, just generally? Is that life insurance policy documentation?
This is an application for a $20,000 whole life insurance policy.
And the applicant or insured?
The applicant and owner and insured is Ryan Cooper.
And States Exhibit number 208, same question, what is that?
That is a 30-year level term life insurance policy, also on Ryan Cooper in the amount of $500,000.
Judge, at this time and by stipulation of the parties, the state would move to admit States Exhibit 207 and 208.
Ms. Watt?
No objection.
All right, States Exhibits 207 and 208 are admitted.
Mr. Gudenkauf, I want to turn your attention first to Exhibit number 207. You stated generally what that is. It's a life insurance policy. What was the amount of that life insurance policy?
That is a $20,000 base amount.
Can you explain what that means?
That is the proceed that would be paid out to the beneficiary upon death.
And I think you already stated the insured party was Ryan Cooper, correct?
Correct.
Who was the beneficiary on that document?
Karina Cooper.
Moving on then to States Exhibit number 208. Same question. What was the nature of that exhibit?
That's the application for a $500,000 term life insurance policy.
And the insured on that policy?
Is Ryan Cooper.
And the beneficiary?
Karina Cooper.
If I understand correctly, upon the death of Ryan Cooper, those are the amounts roughly that would be paid out to the named beneficiary being Karina Cooper, correct?
Correct.
How are those proceeds paid out upon the death of an insured?
Those are generally paid out in a lump sum in a check.
And where does that check originate from?
That would be the home office in Columbia, Missouri.
Now, is that something that's then delivered to you and you take it to the beneficiary, or does that go directly to the beneficiary?
Can be done both ways.
Do you recall, as an insurance agent, becoming aware of the death of Ryan Cooper?
Yes.
And ultimately was a claim made related to these life insurance policies that you just testified to due to the death of Ryan Cooper?
There was.
And to your knowledge, were those life insurance policies then paid out to Karina Cooper?
Yes, they were.
Judge, if I may approach.
You may. You don't need to ask again of this witness if you're planning on coming up again.
All right, thank you, Judge. Showing you the law of States Exhibit 209 and 210. Starting with States Exhibit 209, do you recognize that?
I do.
And what is that?
That would be a claim check in the amount of $24,724.32.
Made out to whom?
Karina Cooper.
And to your knowledge, is that associated with the insurance policy that you testified to, which was States Exhibit number 207?
Yes.
Same question with regard to States Exhibit 210. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is it?
That is a proceeds check paid out in the amount of $514,882.21, paid out to Karina Cooper.
And to your knowledge, is that associated with the insurance policy that you referenced, States Exhibit 208?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, again, by stipulation of the parties, the state would move to admit States Exhibit 209 and 210.
Ms. Watt?
No objection.
All right.
States Exhibits 209 and 210 are admitted.
You stated States Exhibit 209 was a shelter insurance check, correct?
Correct.
Paid out to Karina Cooper?
Correct.
And that was in the amount of, I believe you said, a little over $24,000?
Correct.
based on the documentation kept there by Shelter Insurance, was that check in fact cashed by Karina Cooper?
Yes.
Same question with regard to State's Exhibit number 210. That was Shelter Insurance check that was paid out to Karina Cooper.
Correct.
And did she in fact cash that check?
Yes.
And the total amount of that check again, sir?
On 210 was $514,000. I'm sorry, $514,882.21.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Ms. Watt, any questions?
Just a couple. When did Ryan apply for the life insurance?
I do not have the exact date in front of me.
Do you not have the exhibits in front of you?
Of the policy they paid out, I believe that there was a policy prior to this. The application date on this policy was November 20th, 2013.
Okay. Can you just check, were both policies that you have in front of you applied for in 2013?
That date was on Exhibit 208, which was the term policy. Exhibit 207 was also November 20th, 2013.
Okay. Did you, in dealing with Ryan, did you ever meet Karina?
Yes, I don't recall the exact time, but it was very few times.
Okay, so you dealt primarily with Ryan.
Correct.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Mr. Ringle, anything further?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down and you're excused. Oh, sir, gonna have you go down. Yep. Mr. Ringle, is the state prepared to call this next witness?
May we approach, Your Honor?
You may. So, a couple things I had on my list, and I know you guys had something you wanted to talk about as well, but just one, considering we're removing, when do you folks think you can get me some jury instructions? I'd like to have them maybe by the end of the day tomorrow.
I
Would
can do
that work?
Yes.
Okay, so
Judge.
if you can submit a proposed set of joint jury instructions tomorrow by the end of the day, that would be great. And end of the day means midnight as far as I'm concerned. I know oftentimes, I just heard at a seminar when people talk about this, end of the day to people my generation usually means 5 o'clock. End of the day to, my kids means midnight now since everything's submitted electronically. So it's always good to confirm what that means. So end of the day, we'll call it midnight. We'll pretend we're all in our teens and 20s. Then, Ms. Watt, I think the most recent exhibit D
Yes.
came across as a proposed exhibit. I'm going to need A and B at some point still, and then C, I assume, will consist of a thumb drive or something like that we'll be able to get to the jury.
Yes.
So just want to remind you of that. All right, then last, we're circling back to proposed exhibit 306, I believe, which is the what was played to the jury as a demonstrative exhibit when I believe it was Detective Lord who testified. And so we'd kind of reserved that. I saw, Ms. Watt, you did file an additional objection, written objection, and I think both of you indicated you had more to say on the issue, potentially at this point, so I'll give you a chance. And also, like I said, that was played, I believe, Thursday of last week. So, and I know we had discussed the state was proposing to remove a couple pages for that. I'd like to see the actual exhibit again. So if you could upload, and we're going to need it, either way, we'll need it to complete the record. So if the state could upload a proposed exhibit 306 for my review, I would appreciate it. And then, I guess, with that, Mr. Ringle, I guess, first of all, before we get to exhibit 306, is there anything else you wanted to cover today?
No, just regarding 306.
Yeah, and Ms. Watt, anything else you or Mr. Hawbaker wanted to cover today other than 306?
No.
All right, then tell me what you'd like to tell me, Mr. Ringle, with respect to number 306.
Judge, thank you. I think what the state's the state's original intent and the argument that the state proposed was that the exhibit is essentially more or less information taken directly from the Celebrite reports or Axiom Magnet reports. Obviously, voluminous records, thousands of pages of data from these phones. So I think defense is correct in noting that some of the information that's contained on the state's proposed exhibit is not directly from those Celebrite records. What the state would propose doing then is removing any information, which is fairly limited, but removing any information that is not directly from the Celebrite reports, and then moving to admit it pursuant to Rule of Evidence 5.1006.
Well, here's what I would propose. Before we argue about an exhibit, let's get the exhibit. So you remove what you think should be removed. Then we'll give Ms. Watt and Mr. Hawbaker a chance to look at it. They may not have an objection, they may, but let's cross that bridge if we need to, and only if we need to. So does that work for you, Mr. Hawbaker and Ms. Watt?
Yes.
All right. So I'll know it when it comes in. I'll see it. So, and then you folks will have a chance to look at it. And this is not something that we need to decide till obviously before we submit this case to the jury. So we need to get it done, but there's no time crunch. So, all right.
And Judge, the state will prepare that and provide it to defense and the court today.
Sounds good.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Anything else that we need to take up?
Now for the state.
All right. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.